So let's talk about now about women in midlife really living life without regrets. So why do you think, we basically know why it's important, but why do you think it's important that you really get this message across to women in life that you got to live your best life now?
I think it's because I'm sure all of us, when we get to this point, we do look back because we want to see, me personally, I wanted to look and see when I'm gone, how are people going to remember me? How are my kids going to remember me? What mark do I leave in the world? And I always, before I kind of decided to take this path, I wanted to know, I kind of felt like, I know there's something more out there. What is it? And I was just always like, it's just out of my reach and I just can't figure it out. And in that process, you kind of look back and you kind of think, what if? But I don't want to have any what ifs. What if I would have done this before? What if I would have done that?
Welcome, everybody, to the Life is Now, Do It While You Can show. I'm Suzanne Oshima, and I am a life coach for women in midlife. And today we have a very special guest, Kim Benoy, and she's a confidence coach and a podcast host. So welcome, Kim. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm really happy to be here.
I know. I'm happy because we're talking about how women in midlife need to start living their life without regrets. So,
Yes.
before we jump into that topic, though, Kim, I would love for you to tell the ladies your story about how you became a confidence coach.
Yeah, well, the confidence coach is very new. So I'm just starting out on that path, but it came out of my journey. Um, I had been a nurse for 27 years, and about probably 8 years ago, I kind of jumped into the world of essential oils through a direct sales company. And long story short, I kind of like this business thing, and I decided I wanted to go into my own business. And at the time, I didn't quite know what that meant. So I went to a business training where the person talking said, whatever you're passionate about, whatever lights you up, whatever gets you out of bed in the morning, put that into your business. And I love to get in front of people and talk. As a nurse, we're always teaching and, in front of people, of course. And I taught classes and just all the things. And so at that point, it was when we couldn't get in front of people and talk. It was that not so fun time with COVID. And so I thought, well, my daughter had a podcast at the time. So I thought, I'm going to do that too. So I created my podcast, Midlife with Courage, and of course for women over 40. And over the last year, I've just been thinking about how I love doing my podcast, but I felt like it was fun. It was like an expensive hobby to me. So I wanted to find ways to really use it and to help other women connect and find more confidence. And I just decided, okay, confidence. I've always kind of resisted the idea of coaching other people, but I thought that's actually what I'm doing anyway. So I'm going to jump into it. So I hired a business coach. I've changed some things and I took some confidence coaching courses. And here I am. I've got a program starting and I'm just kind of reinventing myself again.
So, when you say you were a nurse before, and by
Mhm.
the way, thank you for being a nurse. Whenever I've been in the hospital or my parents were in the hospital, I'm
Mhm.
like so grateful for nurses because I don't know how nurses do it because I didn't
Yeah.
get that gene. My mom would always tell me I'm too rough, but the way nurses are so compassionate, so caring, and it's just am so grateful for nurses. So thank you for when
Oh,
you were a nurse.
you're very
Um,
welcome.
but what made you leave the nursing industry?
It actually has nothing to do with COVID, although it maybe a little bit as I heard about nurses being treated the way they were being treated.
Mhm,
But it was more of the idea, it was my age, my stage of life, this midlife,
mhm.
it's wait, do it now because when are you going to do it? Why not now? The job I was in at the time, I was miserable in. I would come home from there and my husband was just, he could tell. And so I came up with a plan to transition out of working as a nurse. And he was like, please do it. Just, not that I
Aw.
needed his permission, but he said, you're so miserable. This isn't healthy for you. And let's just do what you need to do. So that's kind of why I decided. And I thought at one point, I thought, well, I'm going to be sad about it. But really, I was not.
You were like, "Nope, I'm ready." Well,
Yeah.
first of all, you're right. You don't need permission, but it's always nice when you're married to have the support of your spouse
Yes.
when you wanna make a big life change
Yeah.
and do something completely different from nursing. So,
Mhm.
just doing that took confidence that you
Mhm.
were able to garner within yourself, right?
Right, right.
And make that change. So I love that. And so let's talk about now about women in midlife really living life without regrets. So why do you
Yeah.
think, I mean, we basically know why it's important, but why do you think it's important that you really get this message across to women in life that you got to live your best life now?
I think it's because we all, I'm sure all of us, when we get to this point, we do look back because we wanna see, me personally, I wanted to make sure, I wanted to look and see when I'm gone, how are people gonna remember me? How are my kids gonna remember me? What mark do I leave in the world? And I always, before I kind of decided to take this path, I wanted to know, I kind of felt like I know there's something more out there. What is it? And I was just always like, it's just out of my reach and I just can't figure it out. And in that process, you kind of look back and you kind of think, what if? What if? But I don't want to have any what ifs. What if I would have done this before? What if I would have done that? It's okay that we do because that's what life is. You do things, but you have to look back at those things now and say, okay, what am I going to learn from that? What can I take from that?
Yeah. Um, so, the thought that popped into my head, I always try to make connections in my head of the thread that runs through.
Yeah.
And tell me if this is true for you, because as a nurse, a former nurse,
Mhm.
you've seen a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
You've seen people that get diagnosed with something. You see people, at the end of their life. Do you think that also played a part in your living life without regrets? And,
Mm.
I don't want to have any what ifs in life, because I was reading this article once about the biggest regrets people have on their deathbed.
Mhm.
And one of them is all the things they didn't do, the what
Right.
ifs.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I've read that. I'm pretty sure I know what article you're talking about, that information, because
It
yeah,
was a nurse that wrote it, in fact.
I think it was a hospice nurse. Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
actually,
We
yeah.
read the same article.
Yeah, but it's such a great lesson. Um, in 2021, I kinda call it the year of death, which is
Oh
terrible, but
god.
I within a few weeks' time, one of my coworkers had she came into my office and was talking funny, and she's having a stroke, and eventually, like, she died within 2 days, and she
Oh.
wasn't the healthiest person, but we had no idea, and so she was gone, and then one of our clients unexpectedly passed away, and then, like, a week later, my husband's grandmother passed away, and it's just those 3 kind of things came together, and I just realized you never know. Things can happen just like that, and you could be here one day and gone the next, and you need I've always talked about live every moment. It's one of my themes. REO Speedwagon has a song called "Live Every Moment," so I kind of live by that, and that we really need to do that.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, and, you brought up this point about, so I've already shared this with my audience, but you may or may not know. In 2021, I was diagnosed with cancer, and that
Mm,
was my wake up call, and that
sure.
was the catalyst to make me change my life. And that's exactly why our podcast is called "Life Is Now, Do It While You Can," because
Mhm.
of what I experienced, because one of the first things that popped into my head when I was diagnosed with cancer, besides the why me, I almost feel
Mhm.
like everybody's like, why me? Right.
Yeah.
But the one of the second things I should say that popped into my head was, oh my God, Suzanne, you're so stupid. You worked way too hard all these years and you never made time for the things that you love. I shouldn't say never, but
Mhm.
I was always waiting for that someday. I think you talk
Mhm.
about the someday
Yeah.
because I was thinking I had all the time in the world because I
Yeah.
based it off of my parents' longevity. And my dad
Mm.
lived to 95. My mom lived to 88. My grandmother lived to 101. But I think one of the things that I forgot to take into account, and I'm taking full responsibility for this, is while you may live to 88, 95, or 101, the problem is that we don't take into account, I think, is that maybe the last 10 years, you're not able to go out and do all those crazy things. So you
Yeah.
really need to do those
Yeah.
things now while you can, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Traveling is something I love to do, and my husband retired a few years ago, and we still have to wait a little while to get our his full retirement benefits, but this earlier this year, we took a trip to Europe, and I've never even been out of the country before, and yeah, we had to scrimp and save a little bit to get it, but we did it, and it was amazing. So, don't wait for things. Do it now while you can and you have the energy and the health.
Yeah, that is so, so important. So what if like I feel the same exact way you do is
Mhm.
I don't want to look back on my life and say what if.
Mhm.
I want to get to my deathbed again, not to be morbid, but this is the
Yeah.
honest truth about how I feel. I want to go when I get to my deathbed. Oh my God, this has been the best life ever, and
Mhm.
I'm good. I can leave here feeling like nothing was undone. I did everything I
Yeah.
wanted to do. Um, but what if, because this is how I lived my life before this, is I would let the fear get in the way. So what
Mhm.
would you say to a woman that is feeling the fear, it's holding her back, and she knows she needs to live her best life, but the fear does funny things in our head.
It sure does. It sure does, in our whole bodies.
Yeah.
All these things are connected in our bodies, but fear to me, the number one thing I've learned, if I'm afraid of something, I get curious about it. Why? What is holding me back? What am I afraid of? What's really going to happen if I do something that I'm not comfortable doing? And if you can kind of think of it that way, you know, I want to ask for a raise. Okay, oh, I can't do that. Oh my gosh, no. What's the worst thing that's going to happen if you do that? Well, they could say no. Okay,
You're not gonna die.
you're not going to die from them saying no.
Yeah.
But even if it's something really big, like what if I took a year off from my job and traveled the world? Oh my gosh, that like instantly your body goes, oh my gosh, it tightens up. But okay, just why does that why what bothers me about that? Why am I afraid of that? Is it the traveling? Is it the people are going to think something different about me for taking a year off? Like what is it? And just I like to journal a lot, so I will write down everything. If I'm really worked up about something or stressed out, I will write, and get it out on the page. And then things don't seem so big when you do that because they're getting out of your head and they're not recycling in your brain and your brain telling you you can't do that, you shouldn't do that. You just have to get it out of there and kind of take it away for a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it makes total sense because when we just leave it in our brain,
Mhm.
then what I always say is sometimes that would can spiral us down the rabbit hole of doom and
Yes.
gloom of all the bad things that could happen. And then
Yep.
of course we're not going to take action. But I think that's a great point is if we journal about it and get curious and ask the questions of why. Why do I feel that way? Because then you may find, oh, that's not that big of a deal. Or,
Yeah.
oh, and like you said, what if that does happen? The worst case scenario,
Mhm.
you're not going to die.
Yeah.
It's just like, I always share this story. So I grew up in San Francisco and this is so funny. I'm 60 now, but when I turned 31, it's the only birthday I freaked out because I
Yeah.
literally thought my life was set. I had to live the rest of my life in San Francisco. And I laugh now because then I thought I was old. It was
Yes.
too late
Yeah.
for me. And I was bummed because I had never moved to my favorite city, New York City. And then
Mhm.
I was like, "What are you doing, Suzanne? You don't have a husband, a boyfriend. You don't even like your job. You're just doing a job at the time." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh my God, I have to move." And so I did. And I moved to New York at 32 without a job, without an apartment. And I knew one person, and she lived in New Jersey. And
Wow.
the way I was able to conquer the fears in my head is I did the exact thing that you said, is I asked myself, "You know what? Do you wanna get fast forward, when you're in midlife and think, 'Oh my god, I wish I really moved to New York.'" And
Mhm.
but you didn't. And I said, "I never wanna have what ifs in my life." That was number 1.
Yeah.
But number 2, here's what I told myself, and maybe this will help the ladies in the audience, is I said to myself, "Okay, so if it doesn't work, so what? Then just move back to San Francisco. At
Yeah.
least you'll go, you know what? You did it, you tried, and now you know it wasn't the right move for you, but that's okay. I wouldn't die, but I would kick myself though on my deathbed had I not done it. So
Right,
I
right.
love you're going through what's the worst case scenario that
Mhm.
could happen. It's like, so
Yeah.
what? I moved back to San Francisco. It's no big
Yeah.
deal.
Big whoop.
And I ended up living in New York for 22 years, so it all worked out.
It all
But
worked out, yeah.
but for you, Kim, tell us something in your life that you're doing and you're living your life without regrets.
Oh my gosh. I think just having the courage to try new things. As I said
Mhm.
earlier, I grew up, the oldest child in the family, Midwest. Do what you're told. Don't rock the boat. Don't question anything. And when I turned 40-ish, I started like, wait a minute. Just a second.
You're like, "It's
Why?
my turn now."
It's my turn now. Yes. And I think what I've also learned is just to follow my instincts. That kind of goes along with, thinking about what's holding you back. I really think about what feels right to me. What am I drawn to? And I just anything that I'm drawn to and I can feel it has been wonderful and has worked out great for me. Um, so I think just following your instincts and following my instincts has led me to um, you know sharing my story, sharing other women's stories, and connecting with women of this age it's amazing. It is so amazing because we're all in this boat together. We're maybe taking little different ways to get where we're going, but we just want to help each other. And I that's a beautiful thing. And I'm happy to be just a little part of that. And I get to have a microphone and a little camera, and I love that too. So, why not?
And doesn't it make you feel I don't know about you, but for me, when I help women in midlife, it just makes me so happy because
Yeah.
my feeling is, I always feel like society makes women in midlife feel like we're not worthy, that we're forgotten, that we're too old. I'm not saying it, ladies, I'm saying society does.
Yes.
Um, and we can't control that. We can't.
Right.
I think but what we can control is what we think about ourselves, right?
Exactly.
And
Hmm.
so don't believe what society tells you
Yeah.
is we are worthy and we get to live our lives with courage and fearlessness
Hmm.
and do all the things that we want to do.
Yeah.
So, Kim, when it comes to confidence, what would you say are the 3 things a woman could do to build her confidence in living her life, without regrets?
I think number one would be practicing gratitude. think about what you have, and that just practicing that gratitude gives you space to be thankful, of course, for what you have, and then it kind of opens up to more. Instead of looking at something that maybe is a negative or maybe a challenge, well, that's giving me an opportunity to grow. I'm thankful for that. That changes your whole brain chemistry, I think. So number two would be setting boundaries. If something doesn't align with your energy or your values, it's okay to say no. It really is. No is a full sentence. You don't have to justify or explain anything. Just say no, that isn't something I'd like to do right now.
Yeah, that is so important.
Yeah. And then the third one I would say is, like I mentioned this earlier, being curious about things. When we're curious about something, maybe it's something that we've done in the past or other people have done, it kind of takes blame and shame away from what that is. So if you're asking the question, why is that happening? Why do I feel that way? Why does that person do that? We're just saying, there's no blame, there's no judgment. I just need to know more. I need to know more information. Information is empowering, and empowerment gives you more confidence. It just happens. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that is
those would be
so true.
yeah.
I love it that you said to get curious about why you're feeling that way
Mhm.
instead of saying to yourself, because I think we as women can have a tendency to say to ourselves, you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't, you shouldn't be fearful. You shouldn't feel ashamed instead of shaming ourselves, which I know
Mhm.
some of us are really good at, is getting curious and say, why am I feeling that way? And be more gentle on ourselves, right?
Right, right. Yeah, just stop shooting all over ourselves. I've heard that phrase before.
That
Um,
almost sounded like another word when
I
you
know,
said
I'm sorry. If
that's
you need
so
to edit it, that's
no,
fine, but
no, I think that's so funny because I was like, "What did she just say?"
yeah.
And even if you said the word, I'd be fine.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, that's so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Um, so when it comes to the next, let's say 10 years in your life,
Mhm.
what's the big one bucket list thing that you're like, I'm definitely doing that
Mm,
and there's no stopping me because I don't want to say what if and I don't want to have regrets when I'm on that deathbed.
yeah. I would say I will do a big trip, a world trip, and not have to worry about when I need to get back. Like,
Mm.
no holds barred, no, well, you have to be back by a certain time or you have this. I just want to go and enjoy and take time and come back when I'm ready.
Yeah, and not have anything tethering you to like
No,
hold you back or pull you back and
no.
just be free. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's amazing because, doing that in midlife is I always feel like we would enjoy it more than when we would have it if we were in our 20s and 30s and
yeah.
appreciate it more, right?
I think so too. Like I think back to when was in my 20s and 30s. First of all, I got married really early and had kids right away. So I was kind of growing up with my kids.
Mhm,
And you're right, I wouldn't have appreciated any of the things I'm doing now back then. But
mhm.
just having that wisdom and that experience behind me, like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I'm pretty awesome.
Well, and also, I don't have children, but I know as a mom, you would probably back then have felt guilty, like you were doing it for you
Yeah.
because, as a mom, you put your kids first, your husband first, and so I'm
Hmm.
assuming your kids are grown now and
Yep.
are adults, and so
Yes.
now you don't have to think about, "Oh my god, I have to take care of them," right? They're good.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a hard transition too. Like, I'm not, my role has changed and that's different and that's okay. And it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, you're like, "Oh,
Still
good,
is.
I don't have to take care of anybody anymore."
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing, Kim. So how can people find you?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is to just go to my website, midlifewithcourage.com. Super easy. There's a link to all my social media and my blog, and my podcast is also on there as well.